I have nothing. I mean, there's just been the sense of I'm really jealous of you for getting your vaccine, and apparently other people in this room are also vaccinated.
Correct.
And I'm
amazing.
I've had my invitation now for 3 months, and I'm gonna
Because
be.
you wanted the fancy one.
I didn't want the fancy one. I was only allowed to have the fancy one. All right. This is the exact same thing I said in the bonus episode, and you gave me shit for it.
You could say that you want AstraZeneca.
No, I don't want AstraZeneca. I don't
why
want
not?
What? Because that's
So
not the
are you
fancy
British
one.
folk?
Oh,
See,
yeah.
well then you can't be
in our club, our
Exactly.
AstraZeneca club.
Oh, you guys all
Exactly.
have, you guys all have AstraZeneca?
Yes,
And you
I
didn't
stand
die?
by AstraZeneca.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's the people's
I stand.
vaccine, really.
It's the people's vaccine. It's the only
true.
vaccine that's based on previous vaccines, so in a sense, it's the safest.
But
Actually-
I think the people's vaccine is probably like the Chinese or the Russian one.
True.
Sputnik 5.
Yeah.
Semantics.
Maybe just in the context
Yeah.
of Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
I stand
Yeah.
by AstraZeneca.
Okay,
for
fine.
real.
I'll keep the AstraZeneca
it
stuff.
in.
Yeah,
we actually are like working for the AstraZeneca
yeah you're.
tourism board.
You did suggest getting an AstraZeneca tattoo at some point.
Look, I was very excited about getting vaccinated.
Now imagine if you had just like all right, think like any other company that then's a pharmaceutical company. Like if you get like a Pfizer tattoo, that's just like everyone's just gonna think that you like
That
love
sounds fascist,
Viagra.
but
You just wouldn't.
I do
but
love
you would
Viagra.
get an AstraZeneca. It's just something about AstraZeneca.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's got a great name.
I mean, Biontech sounds like you're playing, what's it called? Like Legos, you know?
Biontech sounds like a thing.
Bionicles or something?
Yeah, it
What
sounds
are
like
they
either
called?
like Bionicles, or it sounds like a class of something from like StarCraft or whatever.
I think it sounds like an evil corporation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
From like a
BioNTech, like a movie.
Biontech.
post-apocalyptic
Yeah.
movie. It's all
True.
because of
Yeah.
BioNTech. We live in
Yeah.
this wasteland.
So true.
Yeah, I think the only like thing that you could go like more
It's like a hard
stereo.
sci-fi story,
Terminator.
Dystopian story about people that are vaccinated, people that are not vaccinated, and like what vaccination you got, and it's all like a class system and shit like that. That's
For
that's
sure.
the story. That's
That
beyond
could happen.
Hey! Welcome to your weekly corner Späti. It's myself, Nick, and joined with Yulia.
Hello.
Rob maybe died from all of
From
the
all the vaccines
all the
he took.
vaccines that he got simultaneously. Yes, he got all 23 million doses at once. And Kieran's being a father,
Yeah.
you know. So shout out to all the dads out there. I hope that you're not listening to a podcast, at least not ours. And we are joined today with three special guests. We have Daphne, Zuzu, and Cleo, who are the Blockchainbitchez. What is it called again?
With a Z.
With a Z.
With a Z.
Blockchain bitches.
Yeah, and Zuzu and Cleo also have a podcast called Candid Companion, which primarily deals with sex work and all that cool stuff that we're also going to be talking about here. So thank you guys for coming. And we're in person, breaking laws in Germany, being crazy, you know.
We're distanced.
Yeah, we're socially distancing, of course.
very far away from you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, from the person listening to the show, that's true. But so we have the three of you guys on to talk about a topic that at least Yulia and I have been, wanting to do on the show since we started, which is sex work in Europe, which as me being an American, I have always just assumed it being that then like Europe is this wonderful place where, sex work is legal and therefore then everything is great and good and whatever. And, it works like actual work. And that's not really the case. And, we're, going to dissect this whole dichotomy of that. Also kind of talk about the sense of what is 2020 with the pandemic and then with local politics of Berlin, such as access to housing, how that has particularly affected sex workers. And also what the future in terms of tech and, blockchain and NFTs,
Platforms.
things that, what?
Platforms.
Yeah, certain platforms, things that I've been actually quite critical on the show of previously, but how in sex work these can actually be beneficial technologies. Maybe that not only tech bros are the ones using them. So
Or artists.
or artists selling their 3D rendered images of
Yes.
pregnant Sonic. I don't know what they fucking do. So I guess get it started off the bat. What for a dumb American like myself, all right, who has been told of this great thing, what is the reality of it like if you were to just sum it up for someone who literally knows nothing about the realities of sex work in Europe or in Germany and such?
I would say first that we operate under a legalized system in Germany. So it is legalized, and what sex workers generally fight for, well, I think unanimously fight for, is decriminalization. Legalization means that you're still subject to specific laws that focus on the sex industry specifically compared to other industries. So under decriminalization, you're operating as if you're any other type of business, but you are still subject to workplace health and safety regulations. So you're not a special category of being completely lawless. But with legalization, it means that you're subject to very specific laws that control the work of sex workers, which means that there's like a two-tiered system where some people work in a legal context, usually citizens. And then there's a lot of people who are either like undocumented or for various reasons of marginalization can't work legally. So
They don't fit in the boxes.
Exactly. You don't fit in the boxes. So legalization will usually mean things like licensing. So for example, in Germany, sex workers always like to work legally. You have to be registered, which means you're on like a government database, and you also have to carry around like a little slip of paper with your work name and your legal name on it. And you can be raided at any time and fined if you don't hold this. So a lot of people don't want to carry around a document with their legal name, and this is just one example. There are many examples like this. Yeah,
I worked in America before coming to Europe, and so and I'm North American, so I have experience with criminalization and the fear of, you never know when a cop is going to book you and then arrest you, and this is terrible, and not, feeling like you can, trust anybody. There's also guns in America. It's a very stressful place to work, I would say. And I moved to Berlin also thinking I wanted to be in a place where sex work was legal, for my own peace of mind, for my own safety. And when I moved here, which was in like 2016 or 2017, it was just legal. The category was legal. And yeah, as Cleo was saying, like what happens when sex work is legal is that the government makes all the rules about what goes down in sex work. And the government does not listen to sex workers, and they don't have sex workers' interests as a priority. They don't consider us experts. They're not, consulting us. So all of the legal, all of the laws that they create around our work and around our bodies, end up being counterproductive, or, they end up not serving us. They end up making our life more difficult or even more unsafe. They usually have the interests of other citizens or like the state at heart. They don't have like sex worker interests at heart. So, and for example, anytime that sex work is legal, it means, as Cleo was saying, that people who don't fit into the legal boxes are criminalized. And sex work is obviously one of the, it's the position that's filled with the most marginalized women of all occupations. So there's definitely going to be people that don't fit in those boxes. And
Women and people in general.
Yes, women, and not just women, all kinds of people do sex work. And anyone who doesn't fit into the, requirements, the legal requirements, is then criminalized. So lots of people are just criminalized anyway. And in 2017, the prostitution protection law came into force in Germany, which means that we're all now legally obliged to register with the government, tell the government that we're sex workers, and carry around this piece of ID. And it's super counterproductive because so many people are undocumented, so many people can't apply to register. And, B, Germany doesn't have a great track record of keeping minorities on lists. So why would we want to tell the government, the government doesn't have a right to know this. People who don't want to be this outed, and, we don't know the long-term consequences of what this information is going to be done with. So,
especially when it relates to a very stigmatized profession, and one that can really affect future sort of career opportunities or immigration opportunities and stuff like that. It's just the thought of being on a database
or child custody as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All
it's
sorts of things.
So many potential consequences as a result of this kind of work. exist.
The other thing that I
And-
think is, oh, sorry.
Oh no, all good.
The other thing that I think is particular to Europe is that there's the we call it it's termed the Nordic model. I'm not sure if you guys
I
know it.
what that is.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
Scandinavian countries,
Yeah.
this and that and that.
So,
yeah.
for the listeners, in essence, what that means is that purchases of sex, so customers, clients, are criminalized, but sex workers are not.
Yeah.
But how that works, in essence, is that everyone is
everyone's criminalized, right?
Yeah.
You cannot decriminalize. You cannot make one half of a transaction illegal, the other half legal. Imagine
Yes.
if you're trying to sell a house and the people trying to buy it are against the law, but you're allowed to. Like, how are you going to advertise? How are you like? What if you know, like in the case of what happens in Sweden, I've heard that the red light district is just constantly watched by the police. So then workers have to like jump in a car without any negotiation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like they and like these men are like getting quick. The police are watching, you know,
Yeah.
so they have to. And it's been suggested repeatedly that the Nordic model should be brought in to Germany. And actually, in essence, the Nordic model has been working on and off in Germany since the pandemic started, because sex work has been illegal at times during the pandemic, whilst the customers are fined. Sex workers have not been, but sometimes only in Berlin, but sometimes sex workers have also been fined. So it's going on and off constantly.
This is common in the US though too, isn't it? With like the phenomenon of like the Johns and whatnot, where you have like people who, like the police do this as well in the US to like do sex work busts, where then they can legally then pay for sex work in order then, you know, crack
or
down on
even
sex
get-
work.
That's a
Yeah.
sting. That's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
That's a sting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where they're literally like trying to trap sex
Yeah.
workers. Yeah.
But
no.
isn't it like even the Nordic model is always with these self-proclaimed associations for sex workers who don't have any
Yeah,
sex
like
workers
feminists.
in them? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Feminists saying that they
Yeah.
are,
They
trying
want
to
this
protect
and- yeah,
vulnerable
exactly.
women, but it ends up making the jobs more unsafe.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
so much
It's-
data on that.
Yeah,
And-
it's always touted as like this good idea. And I
Yeah.
feel like when you hear about it, it sounds like it makes sense or something.
Yeah.
Or like when I was not in the industry, it like sounded like it made sense. But then the realities just like don't reflect that. Like having worked in like Ireland, for example,
Yeah.
under the Nordic model, which they have there as well, like it is one of the most dangerous places I've ever worked.
Yeah, well,
For example,
There's so
like-
many reasons why, legalization and Nordic model, which are the main like systems and political models in Europe, they just suck. They don't even work.
Yeah.
They don't even do what they say they're going to do. They don't protect us. They don't have our interests at heart. And most people end up working in a way where they would be criminalized anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest takeaway. I would
And
say.
speaking of that as well, I just have to add with regards to Ireland in terms of lack of safety, was that when the think tanks were coming together to pass the Nordic model, apparently this is something that I read in a book, that they asked, should we speak to some sex workers? And they said, are they able to read and write?
wow.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they really don't consider us in any kind of like political thinking or planning, and it's very obvious in the way that the laws are enforced.
Okay, that's insane. I guess then I to kind of, you mentioned then the legal aspect of how it works in Germany, and there's also then a great, large group of people then who aren't within the legal realms of, doing sex work. What does that reality then look for them? Like
Criminalization.
yeah, just the full. So the essence then of if you were going to go about the system of not doing it with the card or the whatever, the Anmeldung that you have to do as a sex
The
worker.
whore passport, they call it.
Yeah, that's
What
the-
is it
the whore passport.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hurenpass.
Hurenpass.
Oh,
Pass.
damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh god,
Germany.
sucks.
Imagine just applying for that too in the Amt, because you do have to just go
I
and
need a
apply.
woman pass.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
true.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
because
You're
the
not gonna
system
get
was
discriminated against.
the system was like rolled out in such a kind of like non linear way that people would just be going to like random amps trying to get it and being like, is this where I get this thing? And like
And there was no
officials were like,
privacy a lot of the time as well.
I don't know.
How does it then work with then things of? I mean, because this is just a question out of my curiosity. Then is with things like your health insurance and stuff like that in Germany, because I would imagine things like Germany does not cover things like testing under your gesetzliche Krankenversicherung, and that is a big part, obviously, of
STI testing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like access to protection and stuff like that. Where the German government just is very, very, very notoriously bad about this. Where then a lot of people who aren't in this work will go out of the way to get anonymous testing and stuff like that. But when it's your profession, how does that then look as well? Because then also your Krankenkasse, your insurance company, also then has your data, has your job application. Germany is a weird, one of the countries where like you have like Obamacare if it worked, where your work is dependent on your insurance. And I'm assuming that then a lot of sex workers are working and then there's some form of freelance or whatever. That must also then be another hurdle as well, is that then you have your health insurance company, one, not providing the thing that then allows you to do your work. So you're paying out of pocket, which I think a full test is like 150 euros, if I'm not mistaken.
Can be more.
Yeah. And then you are then having to then go through ways that then possibly that data may not then end up on, your card that you get that has all your, data of every ailment and everything that then you've had. So what is this then for sex workers then going along, and then a system that then legally allows it to happen, but then is continuously, one, tracking you, and then secondly, doesn't even really see you then as a worker, even though you are like angemeldet as one with your whore passport, which is the worst thing I think I've heard on the show recently.
Complicated.
Yeah, that's a really good question and super insightful, and something that I think most people don't think about is how the German system is so bureaucratic, so difficult to navigate if you're an Auslander, and so like just really puts you in a box. And if you don't fit in that box, you're really fucked. And so I mean, to answer your question, like I think a lot of sex workers have a second job because of the health insurance issue.
Yeah.
Also because it's just also, to be honest, it's not super lucrative to be a sex worker in Berlin. So I think a lot of people can't even live off it sometimes. But
or they register as something else.
Yeah.
To avoid the health insurance
You
drama.
definitely do not want to tell your health insurance that you're a sex worker, because they very likely will not give you health insurance. Because I do know that there was this one sex worker I knew in Berlin who was super honest with her health insurance company and said that she was a sex worker, and she was a registered sex worker. She didn't have a different second job, and the health insurance company rejected her application, and she even put in a discrimination report. Nothing came of it.
Never will go through in a court.
She literally had to ask a client to, like, with a business to put her through his business as a fake employee. Things like this. It's very
crazy.
It's very under the table. Like, I think Germany really forces you to be under the table here.
And I have to say, like, the testing, it's so hard to get an STI test
A full
here.
screen, yeah.
And I actually wonder if we are kind of like lucky that we are in Berlin, because I know that we kind of like, or at least I go to, a Gesundheitsamt, and I kind of like put my fist down and have like scared them. And I'm like, I'm a sex worker and you need to like give me a test, and it needs to be free,
Yeah.
And that has worked, but I wonder if it would work in other German cities. Like, I have no idea.
It's also just not something that there's any like readily available information about. It's like that thing does exist, and like I have also accessed it, but it's not like a thing you can Google. It's like literally you just have to like harass the Gesundheitsamt until you get that.
It's already difficult.
And they're already like not stoked about it. They're like
it's already difficult if you're not a sex worker.
Yeah, they don't want people to be taking STI tests.
No, you have to pay if you want.
Germany is a rich country. Get your shit together, people. Like,
you have to pay for
prevent
chlamydia test.
It's
like from a certain age on, you have to pay for a chlamydia test.
I was told
It's
at
like,
one.
what the fuck? This is like this thing.
I'm shaking my head.
Yeah.
I went to this one clinic, and it was actually on a piece of paper for sex workers to go to. And I remember they told me like the craziest things. They were just like, oh, like getting tested, more than once every 3 months, like that's a lot. And like, I was saying like, can you test this and this? And, because I'm high risk, I'm a sex worker. And they were like, you're not necessarily high risk because you're a sex worker. And I'm like,
what?
Why are you telling me this? You don't know what I'm doing. And they were like, throat swab. I don't know. Most STIs of the throat just kind of go away on their own. And I'm like,
That's like not true.
I know. I was
not.
literally
Oh
just
my
told untrue information. I was like, this country is the Wild West when it comes to health.
Yeah, it's the
Like,
country though that
that's
thinks
true.
that you'll cure every ailment with hot tea.
Yes.
Sit
Oh, yeah.
down, have a nice tea, rest a bit,
Gonorrhea,
no sports.
cup of tea. Sort that right out.
Something that you just like need an
Some vitamin
antibiotic
C,
for. Yeah,
maybe,
you'll just know.
for your
Yeah, I
immune
really
system.
hope that Corona situation somehow
No,
like,
it
sends
made
the
it
message.
worse. It
I
made
know,
it
but I'm
worse.
just
We
like,
all know this.
Yeah.
It made it so
Yeah.
much
Germans
worse.
need to really, we need like to, maybe with like the election or something. I'm just like, we need, the health system needs like an
You mean where the
overhaul.
Greens, the party that then probably has the most anti-vaxxers in it, will like?
Oh yeah, true.
Something will happen. Oh god,
True.
yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm really used to coming from, I lived in New Zealand and Australia, is like, you know, when you go to the clinic and they have like a giant bowl of condoms and you just fill all your pockets with condoms.
Yeah, in Germany, you don't
You
get
do not.
Yeah.
I remember I went to the
You can
clinic
pick
and I was
some up
like,
at Berghain when
"Where's-"
it was still open. but-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Berghain
Yeah.
was the only
So
place
you have
I
to go
ever found them.
partying to get condoms.
That's actually the thing I wanted to ask. Is that
Seriously, even in the store, sorry,
Yeah,
they
go for
are
it.
super fucking expensive. Is that just
Extremely,
me? Or
yeah,
are
yeah,
condoms
yeah.
Very
I will
expensive.
tell you, there is
expensive?
one trick.
Yeah.
There's a couple of websites you can get them for cheap. I'm not.
Yeah.
I hate to plug fucking Amazon, but Amazon you can get like 100 condoms for 10 euros.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Same with ice.de, you can get like 100 for like 10 bucks.
Ice.de?
Yeah.
I know that one.
Ice.de is in the.
yeah, I know the advertisement. Okay, here we go. Now we are advertising.
No.
Ice.de
I
and
will.
Amazon.
Yeah, no. We at Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, no Amazon. But you can apply to get free condoms if you're a sex worker, but you have to show that your income is very low. And I'm like, what?
seriously?
Like, it's like,
This
do
is
you
like
not
the
want
Moss
people to have safe
situation.
sex?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I also volunteer with an organization called Trans Sex Works, which is actually a pretty amazing grassroots organization. And we go out at night with a bicycle with a big bag of condoms,
Yeah.
and we hand them out to people.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not easy. And yeah, I think that probably, yeah, it surprises me because I often think,
Especially Berlin, I'm sorry, but everyone is having very
I was-
risky
yeah,
sex.
I-
in
I
there.
was
often
just
think
about
what's
to say is
isn't this
that-
a very low cost way to help people?
Yes.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
You know,
Exactly.
instead of giving us this pass that we
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't ask for,
Yeah. Hand
we
out
didn't
condoms.
want.
And creating jobs of people who are like controlling sex workers to see if they have this pass.
Well, Germans love doing that.
I know, but it's
That's
like
crazy.
Because
it's
I was
so
going
offensive.
to say with your first question that the what it looks like if you don't have the pass is that you can't get a job in a studio or a brothel.
Oh, yeah, true.
So that means that, you know, these places get
Legally,
raided.
Yeah.
the thing
And
is,
they
yeah, the
check.
brothels still have illegal sex workers in.
But they get raided, and if you get raided,
They
they, get
do,
massive
you could be
fines.
deported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, just quickly to the Berlin thing is that like Berlin being so like you mentioned of like people just going wild here. It really surprised me when the lack of access for then when you want to get a test or like you want to do things and then you hear then the sense like, oh, Berlin, crazy European city, everyone's
the
having
club.
sex in the club, and it's like. That's true, but you would think that the city would have a little bit better of a way of like, hey, like, okay, if you want to go do this, cool, fine, but like also like you can be safe about it, and they make it very difficult for them, like Yulia said, for even if you're not a sex worker, you're just a normal person.
I will say it is easier for gay men. It's easier.
Yeah,
Because there's all the organizations that then
Yeah.
do
Exactly.
things
But
like that.
it's 2021. Men who have sex with men have sex with women all
Yes.
the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
So it's frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to the point then that you mentioned also too of the like deportations that then people could potentially face is I think kind of going also into like the next category that I wanted to touch is that then like we've been talking about how sex workers like I kind of slightly harping back to the question I had before of that then there are people who are doing the work illegally or not within the realms that the German government sees as being, the perfect, uncommanded way of doing your job that they even hate, it seems like anyway. Sex work is also one internationally that is, like as mentioned also before, not only just women doing it, but also, trans people, men, of course, are also doing it as well. People of color particularly are a large group. And how is this then dealt with then in Europe? Where, again, kind of this like pretend idea then of progressivism, there are a lot of people who are put more at risk because of their sexual identity, because of their their gender, their
socio-
background, their socioeconomic thing.
situation, yeah.
And so what is this reality then for these for the sex workers that then typically aren't the ones who are seen or registered, not even just registered, but like aren't often then seen as then what people would typically associate them with as sex work?
I think that the stereotype of sex work is usually the people that you're describing. Do you know what I mean? The stereotype is like destitute, marginalized people of color, trans people. I feel like that's the stereotype that is really put forward in the media when you see an article about sex work is like a woman's legs just cut off on the street at night. Like the stereotype is almost always street-based sex work. And I think also in Germany there's a really big discussion around being forced by poverty, and that's often used as a way of undermining the
legitimacy of it,
agency. I'm loath to use words like this a little bit because I think it's also dangerous to overemphasize the agency of certain types of sex work, but I also think
or any work.
Yeah, or any work. But I also think that that's when you have these sorts of poverty-based discussions, then you get the discussions about Nordic coming in, where they're like, well, we need to help these poor women from these poor countries.
Yeah, like in Germany, it would be the stereotype of the sex worker would be someone from the East,
Exactly.
like Eastern Europe, being forced into sex work in Germany, or illegally selling themselves under a certain price, like for super cheap or something, like super cheap sex work at the borders of Czech Republic, etc., etc. This would be what you read about in German media.
It's really hard to answer questions, I feel like, about Europe because there is such different
legal
models.
I guess I mean like in the sense of like the we're in Western Europe.
Yes, exactly. And I was going to say, but we have seen, like, for example, with the Nordic model, like Eastern European, like Romanian workers who are European are treated like literally so subpar to how like potentially, a Irish or a English worker, they're literally being put in jail under Nordic model, which is supposed to be like the, sympathetic, like humanitarian way of approaching sex work. And it's like, I would say, and in Germany, for example, like there's huge stigma against Romanian workers and Bulgarian workers.
Yeah, of course.
And to quickly say about Romanian workers, 2 Romanian sex workers were sent to prison in Ireland in 2018 for 9 months. Oh. And they were merely working together in an apartment for safety. They were both very young. They were only 20 years old. One of them was pregnant, and they were sent to jail for 9 months, and then they were deported.
In a place where sex work is, Nordic model. So that is supposed to be, where the clients are criminalized, or like the clients are penalized and the workers are not. Yeah. But the fact that they were working together in one apartment, which from a sex worker perspective is just more safe, is illegal in the eyes of the government because more than one person constitutes a brothel.
Oh, wow.
So if they were alone, they would be fine. But because they were working together, they're put in jail.
Wow.
As
That's
if that is
insane.
a, sympathetic model. Like, no.
Well, we've talked about this, just simply talking about how, like, Western Europe views labor from the East as well. I mean, we did that. Kieran, at the beginning of Corona, did an interview with, of like a Romanian sociologist about how, like, asparagus is made in Germany, which is all migrant labor that is treated like absolute shit, or like the COVID scenario with Tönnies in NRV, where the entire city or town or whatever of Kreisgüterloch had to be like put under law, Gütersloh, whatever the hell it's called. I don't care. I'm not from NRV. Where that entire city, which was primarily Eastern European migrant work, was just put on lockdown because this company had special privilege from Armin Laschet, the current CDU,
of not having to actually reinforce the corona measures in their company, in their industry.
Yeah, and I mean,
no hygienic concept or anything, no mask, no distance, no hand sanitizer.
Nothing.
Crazy.
Yeah, just so that they could keep a meat factory going in West Germany.
Because people need their meat.
They do.
Yeah.
But and I think that really like I mean from the perspective simply just like of a labor perspective, regardless of sex work or not, like the way that Germany views migrant labor in that sense, it just fits perfectly within this model, and that then every German will tell you that then like, oh no that's not the case, and at least in that one it was that then there's entire housing facilities that then are only existing for migrant labor that are trash, that are like falling apart, this and that and that.
I mean, even with this whole like Mall of Berlin thing. Of
well, they didn't pay their workers and shit.
Romanian workers not being paid because I don't know, they ran out of money or something.
I didn't
when
even
they
know
were
about
building
that.
this, or it was illegal.
The company went out of business after they
exactly shit like that.
And when you declare yourself as bankrupt in Germany, you don't have to pay your workers.
Shout out to
Oh,
the
wow.
FAU being actually very active in these cases.
Yeah. So it really does kind of like, fit that. I mean, at least hearing it from you guys in the sense it very much is like, okay, yeah, this is shit. And it makes perfect sense within the, Western European mindset.
Of course. Everything from the East is,
I mean, I even feel privileged. I'm not from the European Union, I'm Australian, but I feel that even being Australian is, I have more privilege in many ways than being someone from the European Union who's from the East.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mhm, definitely.
Yeah. In terms of like
Without a
also
doubt.
not being profiled by the police, things
Absolutely.
like this. When I've worked volunteering on Freudenstraße and Kurfürstenstraße, the police are constantly like, and I've seen it, they will consistently target people who look Eastern European and people who are like visibly engaged in sex work. They're constantly profiling, targeting, hassling, and yet everybody else is just walking on the street, maybe going to the supermarket, whatever. They're left alone. And so it's just definite profiling done against.
Especially with the new
Also,
curfew.
Even before the Prostitution Protection Act came into force, I remember I had an incident with the police. I needed to call them because I was in an unsafe situation. And I, was dealing with two guys from the UK. Who,
Of course, yeah.
exactly. Who had coke everywhere, all over their hotel room, and made me feel unsafe. And the taxpayer in this country called the police, and they treated me like shit.
Oh, wow.
They treated me like shit. Like the police, I mean, you just can't.
Not
like
a surprise,
This is
actually,
like
but
what
yeah.
I want people from outside of Europe to understand is like when it comes to sex work, like nobody is trained. Like it's down, a different police officer may have had a better reaction, for example, may have been like, oh, well, she's white. Like, but you get the wrong police officer and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think this is the thing as well, is that my experience with the police as a sex worker has never been good. And another thing that a lot of, I think, Americans think is like, oh, sex work, it's legal. Sex workers can call the police. No. We can't really, and we tend not to because the police tend to treat sex workers like absolute trash.
Garbage. Yeah.
So I think it's I mean, I'm just having like, bad memories now of also just having to deal with the police, which are always fucking fun. Kind of then switching gears a little bit to then, we are still in Germany in the midst of a global pandemic, and it has affected everyone horribly, I'd say, unless you're, a billionaire, then you're,
Then
making,
you're getting richer,
doing better
getting
than
richer and richer, and you can go buy your, whatever, new Bugatti or whatever it is, because they had their record year last year as well.
I know. What the fuck? Rich people are just buying Bugattis left and right.
They are. Last year they
Hanging
were.
out on their islands or in their summer houses, like social distancing.
Yeah, you could be like that guy who owns all the apartments in Berlin, who's just like chilling on some island and like taking selfies of himself. Yeah.
Saying like, oh look, I fucking here. What's it called? Not doubling up or something.
I don't know these terms.
No, something like
Leveling up?
Leveling up, doubling up. Yeah, leveling up during a pandemic. I learned language. I did this. I learned how to do bread.
Yeah,
or
because you
something
don't
with
have an
baked
actual
bread.
job.
I
Yeah,
know,
you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
simply
It's like,
speculating.
Oh, it's not that bad. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just getting angry. When I
So
think
for
about it.
the majority of us, it's not been going well.
It's not a good time.
And for sex workers particularly, there's been, you mentioned before how Berlin, or I don't know, maybe it was Germany as a whole, had stints of criminalizing sex work. How has then the pandemic been for sex workers then? I know that you guys have your firsthand experience in the city, and we can just simply deal with it on a very local level, but I'm pretty sure it mirrors throughout most of Western Europe, if not also probably other areas as well.
I mean, definitely Berlin is a city that does not have a lot of money. It's so we often rely on seeing tourists and people traveling to the city for business. So having the borders shut down and having the hotels closed means, like, one, that we don't see clients who have the money to see sex workers, and two, not having hotels to work from means that there's been a scramble to try and find safe places to work from. Obviously, a lot of people do not want to work out of where they live for many reasons. For safety reasons, you don't necessarily want clients to know where you live.
Or can't. You can't.
And can't.
Or
Yeah,
you
you just
live in a big
can't.
A or
Yeah.
something.
So that's been a big issue. I think also the fact that so many sex workers are not necessarily documented. They have not qualified for government assistance.
Also, the demand has dropped exponentially.
The demand,
exponentially.
Our jobs do not.
We're making so much less money. Yeah, definitely.
I
People just
basically
don't want to
don't
be
work.
seeing a sex worker during this time. The whole year has been like a huge financial hit, and everyone's had to kind of. It's been really frustrating to know that you're literally, you don't have the option. You have to kind of risk your health if you want to work, and yet, this is your job, and. Yeah, there's so little demand that, it becomes difficult. You feel like maybe you have to take a booking then if there's really no work, and then all of a sudden there's work dangling in front of you. You may not be able to have the boundaries that you once had to be able to pick and choose. Yeah, it's been hugely devastating, I think, for many sex workers financially.
I also think a lot of clients, like, in their mind, they have no idea if we're meeting clients or not, and so they're cautious. They don't necessarily want to meet someone in person to have sex. Like,
yeah, they think we're still seeing 10 guys a day, so they're like, not well, still as if we
still,
never
I
seen
know. I wish.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's been bad.
You guys aren't? What?
Honestly, I wish. Like, can you imagine how rich I'd be?
But actually, that's not only if you work individually. It's also for the brothels. There was the situation
They were closed,
exactly because of you had to apply all the hygienic rules to your brothel, even though that should be a thing in general. There should be sanitizers, etc.
It was like the thing at
There should be like a
clubs.
lounge room where you can social distance, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But then there was also the rule of wearing a mask. So I don't know how you perform sex work when you wear a mask.
Pretty easily. Like,
I mean,
there was a time where, say, massages were happening, and I'm talking therapeutic massages, but erotic massages were still illegal.
Yeah, that's still okay.
Yeah, they were still illegal. So, and then there were times where I believe, basically the restrictions, a lot of clients would not want to see a sex worker if you have to wear a mask the whole time, because so much for them is about having
they want
intimate contact with someone, and that would kill it.
Yeah.
I understand it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
They think we're so risky that they're just like, well, numbers are going up, so shut it down. But
Exactly.
then without following up.
We're always the first ones shut down and the last ones to reopen.
And not even prioritized for vaccines, immediately. Come on.
Seriously. Yeah. They rather vaccinate the police forces than
they called us
sex
super
workers.
spreaders at some point
Oh,
last
wow.
year. They were
What?
like, yeah.
Wow.
There was this article being like, sex workers are super spreaders in
Look at the
Germany,
media.
and yet not prioritizing us for the vaccine.
Yeah.
I
Excuse
think
me.
Yeah.
it's wild to me that even if you were to physically see 10 clients in a day, that's actually quite a low amount of contact compared to other jobs or businesses.
Yeah.
In an office, in a big office, you're hanging out with I don't know how many 50 people.
I think
or
about
something
even a
that.
call center or
Constantly,
something
or
like that.
call center,
Something that
or
then,
at Tunias.
I mean, this
Or
is
at Tunias,
industry,
yeah.
Or as a asparagus harvest help or
yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, or a cafe.
Or
Yeah,
a
of
cafe.
course.
I think it's been bad because sex work has always been it's always functioned as kind of like it sounds so bad, but as a last resort for people who don't have other options. It's
Yeah.
it's occupied by so many marginalized people who just are like, this is the only way that I can have contact with capital fast, and to have that taken away by the pandemic, nobody thought that was ever going to happen,
And as far as I know, that also created a black market, which created a dangerous situation for sex workers, of course.
it can always,
Yeah.
especially when
it's in general, it's always a dangerous situation. But with a black market, as you said before, you don't have the time to actually to actually think about if you're taking an offer.
The demand, I mean, I feel
The
like so
demand is
privileged
low,
in Berlin, and yet, you know, when you have like your rent and you have like no bookings for an entire month, and then one comes through and they want to come to your house, but they don't want to give ID or show you any indication
Not
of
so
who
much
they are because
negotiation
of German
space,
obsession with privacy, then, you know, you're forced to be like, well, do I want to cover my rent or do I want to be safe? And that's always a classic question of sex work that's problematic.
I think rent's the perfect transition then to that. That we had, for those who do not know, in Berlin, there was an overturn of the Berlin rent cap, I believe 2 weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago, where the Constitutional Court of Berlin said, the Constitutional Court of Germany said that the rent cap that Berlin passed on the local level was against the German Constitution because of some lobbying that happened.
Because it's a federal law. There was the argumentation because rent is somehow written in a federal law, so you can't make a decision on rents on a local level.
It was rewritten in 2006 to be that way. So, you know, it's...
I mean, that goes into a weird direction. So, anyway.
But, you know, you mentioned then as well that then in the sense of, you know, one, COVID being a scenario that then has made it difficult to work in general, but then the sense of housing has been also a thing that then, because you are in... you know, as not even just a sex worker, there's like a lot of people in Berlin are in precarious work situations. And how does then something like then this overturning of the Mietendeckel affect sex workers probably more than other professions, as then one of the sense of, you know, access to housing being such a fundamental right, you would seem like is very much so not the case, especially when you are in a situation where you are, you know, maybe not getting as steady of an income as someone else.
We're laughing, we're smiling because I am so fucked right now. I'm specifically so fucked. I owe my landlord $5,000 from last year.
Are you fucking serious?
Almost $5,000, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I signed a new lease in 2020. It was at a much higher rent than my previous one, but I was, you know, this was before the pandemic. I was like, I can afford it now after all my years of doing sex work. I've been doing sex work for almost, 6 years. And I was like, I can do this, not knowing that the pandemic was about to hit. But luckily the rent cap was in place. So that was like the silver lining of the pandemic for me, is being like, okay, well, at least Berlin has come through. There's like this social justice kind of initiative to lower rent. So my rent has halved. And now that that's overturned, my rent has just doubled and I owe almost $5,000. It's shocking. But I don't know. I think that just so many Berliners are in a fucked up situation right now. It's like, it varies to how fucked up people are, but I think that you have to assume that like anything, where you're making, like renters, you're making renters have this huge financial burden during the pandemic.
And 70% of Germans renters as well, which I find to be so wild that they really sided with the minority. I mean, obviously.
In a pandemic? When everyone's work has suffered, people owe this huge amount now and it's a mess. And the response is like more bureaucracy, like you can apply for this loan. And whenever, I mean, like I'm like super privileged. I, have been able to sign leases even, but you have to assume that anything in society that happens where like vulnerable people or like renters or like, more low income people are affected, sex workers are always going to be like double affected because exactly. Like we haven't had the steady income, we're not in like positions where we can just apply for government help easily. And now, rent has potentially gotten more expensive and doubled.
Housing in general is just precarious as a sex worker, especially because generally speaking, like you can't put your income on a rental application. You can't tell a landlord like, hey, I'm a sex worker. Like, please give me a house.
It's super hard to get on a lease in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in Germany, I feel like in a lot of places, if you have cash, you can kind of find a place. But that doesn't tend to really work here.
No,
the bureaucracy
Germans
is
don't care about cash.
No, they
don't care about cash.
That's weird because they do care about
they
cash
do,
when
it comes to paying in cafes or restaurants. But not when it comes to this shit. It's got to be like super bureaucratic. You have to have a fucking Schufa, which is a private company that shows if you have any debts or something like that, any open debts or any like your credit score, or if you have been late with paying something and shit like that. It's a fucking private company.
I think it's not even sex workers who do this, but it's like a lot of people do this, that you basically have to go through the like forgery stage of
Everyone.
finding
Yeah.
an apartment, of
Yeah.
fake pay stubs, fake
Yep.
job,
Yeah.
fake bank statements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's stressful.
And for example, my landlord just told me, because I was trying to negotiate with about the Naxalong that's due, and he's like, "Show me how your income has been affected. How can I do that?" You know? He's like,
Yeah.
"Show me proof that your income has been affected,"
wow.
and I'm like, it's very stressful. So it's like, I think that the Mietendeckel affects just renters in general,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's housing. Berlin, housing in Berlin is always a mess, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah. I think
Wait,
one of the craziest things too, and
Sorry.
oh yeah, oh no,
Just one comment. If you're just thinking about it, your rent was cut in half. That means it's like double the price, overpriced.
Exactly.
Like what you get for your rent, it's like fucking overpriced. It's
Exactly.
double the rent. It's
Yeah.
just it blows my mind. Yeah,
It's bad.
yeah. The
Sorry.
thing that I just wanted to say is that then, like, for example, of you mentioned this weird aversion that Germans have to cash when it's not, paying in the store or whatever. And the thing that then really surprised me more than anything when I moved here is that you cannot open up a bank account in Germany without a legal address, which is so fucked up to so many different people, of that then you can't get a job if you don't have a bank account, which then means you can't get a job if you don't have a legal address because you don't have a bank account.
yeah.
Such a loop.
And
It's a loop.
you're and then a lot of places won't accept if you have like a fintech thing, like, although N26 is notoriously horrible, for a lot of people who move to Berlin, that's been an easier way for them to, like, have a bank account,
Oh, yeah,
because
definitely.
It's the only option,
you have that is your only option, no matter how shitty of a company it is.
Yeah.
There is no maybe there's like ING or whatever, that bank that lets you then open up an account also online.
yeah,
that's like,
yeah.
I think they're a Belgian
I
company.
think there's a
or
few
Dutch.
others as well now, but that
Yeah.
wasn't the case a couple years ago.
But yeah, and it really was the sense of that. Then if you wanted to, a lot of people who come to Berlin and move here have to then do these illegal rents where they're not allowed to then register their address. They can't get that bank account.
Yeah, so many
They-
people not registered
Yeah.
in their addresses,
and they can't get a job. Then like an actual job, like like a
Can't get government help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not registered to your address.
yeah,
yeah. You can only get you can only perpetually exist then in this like black market of getting
Yeah.
paid under the table and shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's like any type of worker, or anyone who just comes and moves to Berlin, even like a student,
Can't go to university if you don't have health insurance.
exactly, like there's so many things that then are just these like never ending, just stupid backwards bureaucratic steps that in just Germany's like, well, no, this is how it works though, right? Like, why would you dare question the fact of our perfect, completely falling apart bureaucratic system?
Yeah, you're fucked if you fall through the system. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like that in any kind of way.
They just never think about people like us,
No.
or they just don't think about anybody aside from a German citizen
Yeah.
with a education, a job, a family,
Yeah.
etc.
I think Corona is like kind of showing Germans that their systems do not work,
Yeah.
but not even in the best way. In this
Yeah.
way where they're like, well, let's just give the federal government more power to make these like laws. It's not like challenging the.
How long did Hartz IV EmpfängerInnen had to fucking like negotiate for getting the FFP2 mask
Yeah.
financed? Because they
Or
were,
you only get like a few though, too.
you
isn't
only
it?
get a few, yeah, and you
Yeah.
always
And
have
they're
to
so
pay like
expensive.
€2 as a transaction fee. I don't
Yeah.
fucking know why.
You mean these
Like, nothing is
masks that
for
like
free.
these masks that are very clearly just like
Overpriced.
no, like we talked about this previously on the show too, is that then it was just like a massive scam. Like the fact that then like the government, that the CDU led government then only allows this one type of mask to then be used, which it ends up being that they're all making fucking money off of it. And then they never overturned it after the entire scandal. They never overturned like here.
They made it
whatever-
worse.
Yeah.
It was like originally the medical masks, and
Yeah.
that was the scandal. And then they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, let's do it again. Like, let's just change it up a little. Let's
Yeah, and
change
now
the mask."
everyone's forgotten that whole CDU
Of course.
Corona mask scandal thing even happened.
Yeah.
Now with like
Yeah.
the sense of then like I love mentioning mentioning him on the show, but Amin Lasha doing fraud with his son over this is one of my favorite stupid bits that
It's a
I just
cute fatherly son activity, you know.
Yeah,
right.
you know, just
committing fraud with your
committing
dad.
fraud with your
Very
son.
German, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
With your Instagram influencer son so we can get more sponsors.
German Ryan Gosling.
Oh, I don't know him.
FP2 likes baby.
I can show you pictures
Please.
later.
Yeah. After the show we will show you my
Young
collage I've
Lachey.
made of
There's
Joe
a huge
Lachey.
one on his wall. It's weird.
Yeah. It's motivation.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
noticed like everyone, like at the beginning of the pandemic, so many people were like, if we just pull together and like we wear a mask and it's all going to be
Yeah.
over soon.
Yeah.
And like that
A
goodwill,
year and a half later.
that goodwill has been eroded. We're like,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
scamming
Yeah.
us.
We're in
Yeah.
lockdown for 5 months now. Like,
6. No,
Yeah.
6?
I don't know.
I've
Six.
lost track.
12.
What
Yeah,
year
me
is it?
30 years, who knows?
I don't know anymore.
But I guess then too of also, you know, we've been discussing then the realities of what it is, like the material economic realities for sex work, then in the traditional methods of how.
But we are solution. Wait, now fuck.
What?
Go on.
Are you like
Go
trying
on.
to think of a cool startup phrase to
Yes,
use?
I was.
All right,
but
awesome.
I lost it.
Yeah.
Something innovation.
We are a solution-oriented podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Something I would have.
Innovation, very disruptive. Okay, whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
like now.
You're good. Yeah, perfect. There's been I mean, I think you have to been like living under a rock in the past 5 years or so to then see how then sex work has you know, taken to these new frontiers of the digital age, you know, whether, you know, you partake or not. It's pretty obvious that there are, you know, these sites like OnlyFans, subscription-based services, and also then the advent of like other technologies, you know, whether I'm a fan of them or not. Like I've been very vocal on the podcast before. I do actually like then having the discussion of then not rich tech bros being the ones leading it, and actually people that then who can possibly benefit from then you know, material change of what, you know, the economy looks like. And sex workers, it seems like, are kind of at the forefront of this in a lot of aspects compared to other you know, workers, in the sense of really trying to then take the situation that they're in and then use then these new avenues to go down it. So like, I mean, I mentioned, you know,
That's sex work.
OnlyFans.
That's sex workers to a T. It's like sex workers have just had to deal with so many like law changes and just like things being shut down. Like, you know, the website that we make all of our money, like Backpage, RIP, being shut down overnight and having to just kind of like be like, what's next? How to make money? So I feel like sex workers are very good at just like innovatively adapting.
I always
For
think
better or for
that
worse, even though it's so frustrating. It's
it
not
is,
fun.
yeah.
But yeah, adapting.
And not just frustrating, sometimes it gets people killed
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they get ever more desperate because their income's been taken away from them.
So,
Yeah.
what ways then have like I mean, these, you know, this adaptive nature that sex workers live in, how do we then currently see that then translating into the current, you know, I don't want to say digital age because we've been here for my entire life at least, but yeah, like what are some ways that then that we're seeing this, you know, relationship to, oh God, I want to say the most Marxist thing ever, the means of production.
I think that was one of my tweets once, like, I own the means of production.
I mean, yeah,
It's my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These two babies.
Yeah, it's your time to shine, Daphne.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I feel like, well, the pandemic definitely, I would say, helped grow OnlyFans a lot.
Oh yeah, every sex worker went online.
Exactly. We all had to. I mean, it took me a lot longer than everybody else. Having only been on
we
OnlyFans
were
for
all
like,
kind of late.
yeah, hesitant.
We were like, oh, we're old. We don't want to have to do this.
Yes,
Come
we're
on,
making
is
porn
this
now.
real?
Oh God, do we have to learn TikTok?
Is it real?
Which is a thing that people are using.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I thought it's not allowed on TikTok.
It's not.
It's
It's
very
not.
restricted, but people are finding
It's not,
ways.
but if
We
you
always
want
find
to
ways.
just have a TikTok where you just seem like a cool chick
Cute girl.
and then people see your name and then maybe Google, you know what I mean? Then they find your OnlyFans.
Eventually.
This is actually what's happened, I feel,
Very
since...
subtle advertisement.
Well, this is the thing that I think has happened since, honestly, the trend started when Backpage shut down, but I can see that in my career, how it's gone is that sex work has become a lot more almost like adjacent to being an influencer. that the marketing requirements are so. Honestly, I do think so.
No,
Zuzu's shaking her head.
I'm shaking my head because I'm like, fuck my life.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Didn't plan for
gone are the
this.
days where I could just throw up a sexy pic. Now I have to be
Exactly.
like personality, brains,
no.
You have to learn all. You have to learn.
podcast.
Good lighting.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of competition now, though,
Oh,
right?
so much competition.
Because a lot of people started doing that because a lot of people also lost their job, especially in America,
Yes.
and then turning to OnlyFans is making
This
that
is the thing
their
that
income.
drives me crazy when these feminists and like all these people are saying like trafficking and like you know all these people are like
Can they read or write?
chained to
we're
radiators and I'm like we are literally like the cockroaches you threw the nuclear bomb on who were like we're like literally taking like photos of our asshole with like amazing lighting with our toes like you know you have fucked us up so many times and here we are with the fire content every day
With a
looking
beautiful asshole.
great.
Subtle advertising, like
know,
just
you know.
finding ways to advertise, even
Learning-
though like we're banned
Every
on
platform
every
is shut
platform.
down.
Learning TikTok
Seriously,
dances well
everyone-
into our 30s. Like, you know.
Everyone should get a job in marketing, actually, because that
Actually,
is
though.
incredible.
Honestly, it's our marketing skills, our social media skills are
Literally, when I first started in 2017, like my ad was like, I'm bubbly and I'm very friendly, and here's some pictures of my breasts with a iPhone 4. You know, like gone are the days. The
And now
golden
guys
era.
are like, how do I know you're real? And you're like, oh, you can just check my Twitter that I update every single day with new pics and, you know, like my 14,000 followers and podcasts that I run and NFTs that we've put out. And you can
Now you're
ask
just
Yeah.
flexing.
A little bit.
I don't mean to. It's actually like frustration because I still get asked if I'm real like all the time.
So definitely enlighten us on the NFT and every other kind of technological
All the
solution.
technology.
Oh,
Yes.
everything,
Technology.
please.
Well,
What's your elevator speech for all
let
technology?
us, okay, I've got plenty. Yeah, well, I guess we put out a bunch of NFTs recently under the moniker the Blockchainbitchez. There's a very hilarious trailer that you can go and watch if you want. Basically, we saw like how much hype NFTs were having and thought we would try and do the thing. And
It was your genius idea.
I guess,
You
yeah.
proposed it to us. You were like, guys, there's a lot of hype. We got to jump on this.
Do a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we were kind of just like throwing something at the wall and seeing if it would do anything. We haven't actually sold any yet, but that's fine. Hopefully we will.
hopefully when people listen to us,
Yeah,
and
there we go.
hear we're cool people.
I mean, we just had an episode last week that was very much anti-NFT,
Yeah, that
but
was-
maybe not anti-NFT, but
But it was
just
Hey, we're pro NFT when it comes to sex workers. Surely this is like farm to
yeah,
table
yeah, yeah.
level.
No. This is the thing I wanted to say
I
is
was
that
connecting actually the people like behind NFTs
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and they're like kind of fascist.
Yeah,
Totally.
But I mean, the
sure.
thing
Yeah.
of it is a thing that then exists as a technology, and I think that then the people that then who are using it in the sense of that then it benefits that they are themselves creating, and I don't mean this in the sense of like douchey artists who have their like stupid 3D pregnant Sonic art, even though we are going to do that, maybe not as an NFT,
We
but
should do that
No.
because
I'll buy it.
but
it's
but
beautiful.
definitely like I mean yeah, just like kind of trying the waters out of then what technology can then stick for then, or technology I think is a stupid word to use. What new method that then exists in the economy for then you as a sex worker to use should obviously then be tried.
Totally. Well, I mean, I feel like NFTs are not going to be the future of like online sex work. Like they just don't really make sense as a means of selling porn. Like to mint one is extremely expensive with like the Ethereum gas fee. I mean, I think there are other platforms which you can mint on and use like different tokens. But at the moment, the way it works, it's like not exactly ideal for selling porn. Generally with like selling porn, you want to be able to sell things for like people are not paying the kind of prices that you would sell an NFT for generally. But I think like blockchain technology is like interesting in an adult content sense in general, purely because the way in which everything currently functions is just like really not beneficial for people who try and sell independent porn. At the moment, like OnlyFans really took off in the last like 2 years. And that was mainly because like all of the previous kind of independent porn sites would take like a 40% cut, something like that.
Some even took 70%.
Yeah.
Some camming
Extreme.
platforms take 70%.
Yeah. And so the thing that made OnlyFans different is that they only take a 20% cut, which I still think is really high.
It's quite high.
Yeah, Patreon only takes 8%.
Wow.
There we go.
And
Unfortunately,
Patreon kicks sex workers off.
Yeah, that's the thing
you
though.
can
is that,
have a sexy Patreon, but it still has to be a bit like artistic.
Yeah.
Like I
That
know
was the
there's
thing
a
I
few
was just
people-
about to say
yeah.
is that then there is exactly that there are platforms that then theoretically could exist. However, for sex workers, they don't, you know? So it's like as an artist or as another form of creator, as like a YouTuber or a podcaster, we can get onto Patreon. We can then put our stuff on there that then, our people, our supporters like and will give us money for. And we're never really, threatened whatsoever,
because because of
And part of the reason why that is because I'm sorry, but it's because horny men ruined it.
Yeah.
Because
they ruin everything.
Sadly, I mean, so the thing is that that when like the thing with banks is that they often don't like to provide to adult processors because horny men tend to have a shame over after they've paid the money and then they feel ashamed and then they want their money back. So they get a lot of chargebacks.
Wow.
And that is often why porn is a high risk payment processing.
Basically payment processors, there's only a few that service the adult industry in general, and they all have really high fees because of this.
Yeah.
So I think like 20% is probably like, I'm sure OnlyFans makes great profits, but in terms of like how much of that cut that they actually take, I would say it's like maybe 5% or something. And I think they still do some like weird payment shuttling stuff. Like I know they use Stripe for some of their payments, but they probably like larger porn people, etc., they would use like a different payment processor for. So they would be using like some for some creators and then different ones for porn ones or something.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. I don't know how accurate that is. But yeah, basically like it's really shit that you can't sell porn without paying an extra 20%.
Yeah. Even something like PayPal too cracked down on.
PayPal's the worst.
They're old
Cannot
school.
use
20 years
Yeah.
they've been
Yeah,
doing this.
exactly. Yeah, it's just funny because PayPal came onto the the market from Peter Thiel, who's a fucking psychopath libertarian guy who's like, I want access to everything, this and that and that. And PayPal, for those who don't know, have like incredibly strict restrictions on where your money can go, and PayPal is very particular about even like certain even in a non-sex worker sense, you can't donate to certain organizations because PayPal doesn't see it as appropriate. You can't, do transactions on all their websites because PayPal doesn't have a good relationship with it or whatever. Wow. And it was like, the only other option then is this, decentralized method
Crypto.
of
I think that's where it
transactions.
comes
Quickly
in.
to say with PayPal though, the thing that that PayPal differentiates is that they will process payments to porn sites sometimes.
Yeah.
But they shut down individual sex workers' accounts all the time.
lovely.
And RIP to 660 euros that I lost when PayPal shut my bank account down.
Wow.
They shut my account down twice, but second time they took 660 off me.
But there's also the fact that like
How?
doing porn is technically legal, but being a companion is not legal. So sometimes these banks are it's legal to do porn, but if anyone is a sex worker, that's completely
Your bank
Even-
account can be locked and everything
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't even apply in like legalized countries. Like you can't run a payment processor on an escort site in Australia, for example, even though it's like decriminalized in New South Wales at least. It just like they just don't exist. Like there's just not payment processors that sex workers can really use, which I think is like interesting coming in with crypto because there is no bank. So receiving cryptocurrency is like a great way for a sex worker to receive a deposit, for example. And like when you want to receive a deposit as a sex worker, generally you don't want your real name connected because it's dangerous. Like people will, I don't know, stalk you, kill you, like out you to your family,
Dox
to
you,
your workplace, etc. Like receiving a payment under your actual name is like very much something that we don't want to do, and so that is possible with crypto. It's just like it's overly technical right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Another thing I just wanted to ask too is that then, because I'm a dumb economics nerd, and how does it work in the sense of like, are there like specific currencies within that you use that are a little bit more stable than like I couldn't imagine getting a payment in like Bitcoin or Ethereum that then like the next day you don't know what your like amount is.
I wouldn't mind just receiving
Well,
in either
of course,
Bitcoin or Ethereum. Just
But in
as
the
I would
past,
hodl
I was
forever.
scared of that. In the past,
Yeah.
I was like, why would I ever get paid
because
a full
Bitcoin's
rate?
hyper deflationary right now, which
Yeah.
is like
Exactly.
not
But
the
Ethereum is doing well. So.
Yeah.
which is also hyper deflationary.
But
now
it's also
from
at
a
its
currency
all-time
thing.
high. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe
So-
I had a
like
great time.
Litecoin, like no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
No
just
Litecoin
like,
for
it's
me.
like,
Dude.
it just sucks in the sense that then because, at least from the perspective that I see of that, like there is a method of them getting paid, but the method that you're getting paid is entirely done on the sense of what the value of that coin is then every single day. So you have to kind of like
It's tough.
figure
yeah.
out then, you know,
You could receive payment in a stable coin. So like Tether, for example, the value tends to correlate with like the US dollar.
okay.
But again, it's more just that like platforms don't really exist for this yet. There is one now that we've all vaguely
SpankPay.
SpankPay that we've all started using, but it does also charge quite a large fee. It's like
$5.
Is it $5?
Oh, shit.
5 or 10?
Yeah, something like that, which is not too bad. But like you can receive, and people can also pay for that with a credit card, and then you can receive it in crypto.
Oh, okay.
But I don't exactly, I've never actually been paid through it, so I don't know how well it works. And then I think you can only receive Bitcoin and Ethereum
Yes.
currently. I don't think you can receive any stable coins. So it
I
doesn't
don't
really
think
fix
so,
that
no.
thing. But
But we're used to it being complicated because this
Yeah.
is literally our lives. Like
Yeah.
receiving money is in any other way other than cash is always so complicated.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
a wise person on Twitter once said, I can't remember, that cash is the original cryptocurrency.
That wasn't me. I would have never said that.
A sex worker said that.
Well,
I think
okay,
it was
then definitely wasn't me
Bardo
then.
Smith. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on as being the lone dum-dum here who did not really know what's going on, just kind of asking questions, you know, in the wind, seeing what would stick. I had a wonderful time. Where could our listeners find you? Whether it be
Twitter,
your podcast, Twitter, whatever it is.
Well, the best way to find me is on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. So I'm Cleo Constantine on Twitter. I guess I'll spell it out. CleoConstantine.
I'll put all the links in the,
Okay.
We always
And
spell ours
we always
out.
spell our
but
names
we were
out.
told to do that, and we just always do
Yeah,
it.
Okay,
just picturing
yeah.
someone getting a pen and paper, writing it down. Anyway, and also we have a podcast called Candid Companion. And
I'm Zuzu Gabrielli on Twitter.
I'm Daphne Dahl on Twitter.
You can find all our links usually on
Yeah.
Twitter also.
Also, our like NFTs website has all of our links on it. So that's blockchainbitchez with a Z.com. Blockchainbitchez with an S was being domain squatted by someone else. So I couldn't take it.
Yeah, that.
But
some like weird, you know, Reddit guy and like
he's like, yes, this is going to
2000.
pay off
Yeah.
one day.
Blockchain bitches.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for having us.
Yeah, thank you for
And-
having
it was
us.
a blast.
To our listeners, then we will see you guys then on
See
the
you guys. Sorry.
bonus feed, I guess. Well, I don't even know what's coming next week. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
bonus,
Cool.
yeah.
Then we'll see you on Friday. Then.
Yeah.
And
All right.
take care. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.